You are more afraid of a chatbot than you would be of a lion. Not right now, maybe. But somewhere in the last few years, a strange video, a strange headline, a strange conversation with a machine that sounded a little too human made your stomach drop in a way that a nature documentary never could. You have never met a lion. You will probably never meet one. And yet the idea of an algorithm quietly learning everything about you feels worse than teeth and claws. That doesn't make sense. Or does it? The real answer is far stranger than AI is scary. The real answer is that your brain was never built to be afraid of the right things. It was built to be afraid of the old things. And artificial intelligence has found a way to sneak through every ancient tripwire at once. Start with the lion. For most of human history, a lion was a known quantity. It had a shape. It had a smell. It moved in ways your ancestors could read 100 meters away in tall grass. Fear of a lion is old, but it is also simple. See the shape, feel the fear, run. Your amygdala, the small almond-shaped cluster deep in your brain that flags danger before you're even consciously aware of it, evolved to handle exactly this kind of threat. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux spent decades mapping this circuit, and what he found is that your brain has a fast, sloppy pathway that reacts to danger before your slower, smarter cortex even finishes processing what it's looking at. That pathway kept your ancestors alive on the savannah. It is fast, it is dumb, and it was never designed for anything that doesn't have a body. Think about how quickly that reaction happens. Before you've consciously registered lion, your heart rate has already changed, your muscles have already tensed, your body started moving before your mind finished thinking, and for almost the entire span of human existence, it was aimed at things with a physical presence, a shadow moving wrong, a rustle in grass that shouldn't be rustling, a shape too large, too close, too still. Every one of those cues has an edge you can see and a distance you can measure. Your fear, however intense, always came with information attached. How far away is it? Which direction is it moving? Can I outrun it, or do I need to fight? So what happens when the threat has no body at all? No shape, no distance, no direction to run? This is where psychologist Martin Seligman's research becomes useful. In the early 1970s, Seligman proposed something called preparedness theory. He noticed that humans develop deep, fast phobias of snakes and spiders almost effortlessly, even in cities where nobody has seen a wild snake in their entire life. But almost nobody develops a spontaneous phobia of electrical outlets or cars, even though statistically those things are far more likely to kill you. Seligman's explanation was simple. Evolution pre-wired your brain to fear specific ancient dangers quickly because the humans who feared snakes fast enough survived to pass on their genes. The humans who didn't. Modern threats, the ones that actually kill more people every year, never got that same wiring. Your brain simply arrived too late to be afraid of them properly. Later researchers built on Seligman's work by testing this in labs. Show people a series of images, some snakes, some flowers, some faces, some guns, and ask them to spot the different one as quickly as possible. Across study after study, people find the snake faster than the gun, even though the gun is the modern object most likely to actually be dangerous in daily life. Your visual system is tuned like an old alarm that only recognizes a narrow set of ancient shapes. Everything outside that set has to be learned consciously, slowly, the hard way. Fire alarms don't come pre-installed for spreadsheets, debt, or self-driving cars. They don't come pre-installed for artificial intelligence either. Artificial intelligence is the strangest kind of new threat because it doesn't fit either category. It has no fangs, so preparedness theory alone can't explain the dread. But it also isn't boring and mechanical like a car, something your brain can file away as background risk. AI does something almost unfair to your nervous system. It borrows the one thing your fear circuits are exquisitely tuned to detect, the presence of another mind. Think about how a face works on you. You can spot a human face in a cloud, in a power outlet, in the front grille of a car. This is called pareidolia, and it isn't a glitch. It's a feature. Detecting minds, especially hidden or hostile ones, was so important to your ancestors that your brain became willing to see faces everywhere just to avoid missing a real one. A predator hiding in the bushes, a rival tribe approaching at dusk. Missing a mind that meant you harm was far more costly than imagining one that wasn't there. So your brain became a hair-trigger mind detector, willing to guess wrong 100 times just to catch the one real threat hiding among them. Psychologists sometimes call this hyperactive agency detection. It's why a creaking floorboard at 3 a.m. feels like a presence, not just a temperature change in old wood. It's why ancient myths are full of spirits in rivers and gods in thunderstorms, minds imagined into forces that had none. For most of history, this system misfired constantly, and mostly harmlessly. You'd feel a chill, glance around, find nothing, and move on. The cost of a false alarm was a moment of unease. The cost of missing a real one could be your life. Evolution kept the trade. And now, in a strange twist nobody planned for, you've built machines that actually do have something resembling a mind behind the glass. For the first time in your species' history, that ancient alarm isn't misfiring, it's detecting something real. Here's where it gets stranger still. In 1970, Japanese roboticist Masahiro Mori described something he called the uncanny valley. As robots and animated figures become more human-like, our comfort with them rises, right up until they become almost but not quite human. At that point, comfort doesn't just plateau, it collapses into revulsion. A robot that looks like a robot is fine. A robot that looks exactly like your neighbor is fine too, in theory, but something that looks 95% human, with eyes that track a fraction of a second too smoothly, or a voice that pauses in almost the right place, triggers something closer to horror than curiosity. Mori's theory was built around physical robots, but it maps almost perfectly onto conversational AI. A voice that responds instantly, that seems to understand your tone, that occasionally says something a little too insightful, a little too warm, sits right inside that valley. Your mind detection system fires. It says, something is here, and then your slower, rational brain catches up and says, but nothing is here. That gap between the ancient alarm and the modern explanation is where a huge amount of AI dread actually lives. Consider the difference between an old chatbot and a modern one. 20 years ago, talking to a computer program felt like talking to a computer program. The responses were stiff, the mistakes were obvious. Nobody's uncanny valley alarm ever fired because there was no valley to fall into, only a flat, clearly artificial surface. But a modern voice assistant can pause at exactly the right moment. It can mirror your tone. It can apologize convincingly when it gets something wrong. Each of those small human touches drags the experience further up the slope of the valley, closer to the point where your mind detector and your rational brain start to disagree about what's on the other side of the screen. That disagreement is not a bug in your thinking. It's two very old, very different systems trying to interpret one very new kind of thing. There's a third piece to this, and it comes from risk researcher Paul Slovic, who spent his career studying why people fear the wrong things in exactly the wrong proportions. Slovic found that humans don't calculate risk mathematically. They feel it based on a small set of psychological triggers. Is the risk unfamiliar? Is it invisible until it's too late? Is it something you can't control, imposed on you by someone else's decision? Driving your own car checks almost none of those boxes, so it feels safe, even though it statistically isn't. Artificial intelligence checks nearly every single one. It's new. It operates in ways almost nobody fully understands, including many of the people who build it. And critically, you didn't choose it. It was trained on data you never approved, deployed by companies you don't control, making decisions about you that you can't see happening. Slovic's research predicts, almost exactly, that this combination would produce dread completely out of proportion to the actual measurable danger in any single interaction. He found the same pattern decades earlier with nuclear power. People rated nuclear energy as one of the most dangerous technologies in existence, far above things like smoking or driving, which killed vastly more people every single year. The math never supported the fear, but the psychology explained it perfectly. Nuclear risk was invisible, poorly understood by the public, and controlled by distant institutions rather than personal choice. Swap nuclear power for artificial intelligence, and the sentence barely needs editing. You are, in a very real sense, running the exact same fear calculation your grandparents ran about the atom on a completely different technology and getting a remarkably similar answer.
So layer these together. A fear circuit built for claws and teeth, with no update for anything invisible. A mind detector so sensitive it sees intention behind a chat window. An uncanny valley effect that turns near human responses into something closer to threat than comfort. And a risk perception system that specifically amplifies anything unfamiliar, invisible, and outside your control, doing exactly what it was built to do to something it was never built to see. You are more afraid of a chatbot than you would be of a lion. And now you know why. Because somewhere behind the screen, your oldest instincts finally found something that looks back.